Ready.
Welcome to the briefing session of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. Today's briefing is for the Thursday, March 4th, 2021 meeting. And as we begin our session normally, we go to Joshua Swift, who is the Director of the Forsyth County Public Health Department, to give us the latest COVID-19 update. Mr. Swift, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners. I hope you can hear me
Yes, sir.
and see me.
Sound good.
I will, thank you. I will pull up the slides quickly.
I notice you're wearing your vest today.
Yes, we're at the fairgrounds today.
Yeah, for
So
full house.
actually today yes, we have, today we plan to see over 1,600 individuals come through.
Whoa, have they started yet?
So we have started. They started early this morning and we'll go till 6 o'clock.
Whoa.
So I will give a briefing similar. I know I was just here on Tuesday. Our total cases of COVID-19 so far, we're at 31,417. Last 14 days, we've had 1,690 cases, which brings our average cases per day to 120. This is the lowest it's been in several months, I would say 6 to 8 months. And our total deaths since the beginning of the pandemic is 340. So this is the chart you've seen before. As of the 20th of February, we had 30,653 cases with a breakdown by gender. Then you can see the breakdown by age, still trending where the majority of our cases are under 45 years of age. And then you look at the breakdown by race and ethnicity, with the majority of cases white, then 21% Hispanic, and 20% African American. This next chart shows our deaths. We're still at 1 to 1.1% of our COVID cases that result in death. You can see the breakdown by gender, and then you can see the breakdown by age and race and ethnicity. I would just, call your attention to the age. Obviously, from the beginning, the majority of our deaths have been in those 65 and older. So when you look at that age group and you break it down, their death rate is obviously much more than 1%. And so just, drawing your attention to that. And since the beginning, we've stressed that younger individuals have the vaccine, they're positive, they are the cases, but then they can spread it to our older adults who are more susceptible to more severe illness and death. This next chart, again, shows you the hospitalizations over time. Going up a little bit, but still much better than we were at our peak when we were over 100 hospitalizations. Next shows the deaths, again, over time, week to week, how the number has risen each week, and it keeps accumulating. Next, vaccines, like I started with, we're here at the fairgrounds. We're giving 1,669. That's how many people are scheduled today to come through. Our total vaccines administered by the health department so far, as of the 23rd, is 32,017 doses. This is 20,495 first doses, and then 11,522 people have come back through for their second dose. Thus, they've completed the series. These next four charts are looking at what I told you Tuesday with the percent of the population that's received their first and second dose, but also we're going to look at the percent inside each demographic, such as inside race and ethnicity. So when you look at the residents who've received a COVID-19 vaccine as of the 23rd of February, this is from the state's dashboard. This is for Forsyth County residents. They could have come to the health department, one of our two hospitals, or they could have went outside of the county and received their vaccine. But you can see the breakdown of the total population. 12.3% of the Forsyth County residents have had their first dose. Then you can see the breakdown by age. The majority are over 65 and over 75. And then you can see the breakdown by race versus, so basically what this is showing is of the doses that have been given, 76% have been to white individuals, 16.7% to African Americans, and then 3% to Hispanic. The same on the left, the percentage of the doses that have been given to individuals have been 34% of individuals, of the doses have gone to people in the 65 to 74, 27% of doses have gone to people over 75. Dose 2, looking at it the same way, 7.6% of the population has gotten a second dose, and of those doses, 29% have gone to individuals 75 and over, 27% of those doses have gone to 65 to 74, and then on the right of the screen you can see that 80% of those doses have gone to individuals who are white, 12.8% to individuals who are African American, roughly 3% to individuals who are Hispanic. Now these next slides, this is referring to what Dr. Martin was speaking of, wanting to get inside that subpopulation, that group, to see, okay, what percentage of people in this group, age group or race and ethnicity, have received the vaccine. So again, the top part, dose number 1, is still the same number, 46,946, 12.3%. But when you look at this, so in Forsyth County, 49% of individuals who are 75 and older have received the vaccine. 43% of Forsyth County residents who are 65 to 74 have received the vaccine. So next, when you look on the next side, when you break it down by race, you can see 13.8% of white individuals have received their first dose, and 7.2% of African American individuals have received their first dose, and then roughly 3% of Hispanic individuals inside that group have received their vaccine. So the next slide is the same thing, but just looking at the second dose. So you can see that 33% of 75-year-olds in Forsyth County and above have received their second dose. So they got their first dose and now their second. 21.5% of 65 to 74-year-olds have received their second dose. Then on the next side, when you look at broken down by race, 9.1% of white individuals have received their second dose, and 3.4% of African American individuals have received their second dose, and 1.7% of Hispanic individuals. So just hope that clears it up. So again, the first two slides we were looking at looked at all the vaccine, where it's gone, to what age groups. This one is looking at just the population and what percentage of the population has received the vaccine. Again, as of yesterday, we went into that first part of Group 3, which now we're active in child care and school workers for public and private schools and child care. As March the 11th, or maybe 10th, I've got the dates mixed up, we're going to move into all of Group 3. So that's just a graphic that's been updated that shows you where we are right now. Today and tomorrow, a lot of our vaccine that we're doing at the the fairgrounds is going to be focused on private schools, and then on Saturday it'll be focused on Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools, the public school system. Again, I want to make sure to note that we're working with both Novant and Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center to do this effort, because this is a heavy lift. Just inside Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools, you have 9,000 faculty and staff. So we're working together to collaborate and do this together. So again, that just basically explains what I said. Actually, it's March 11th that others in Group 3 will be eligible to receive the vaccine. So that's frontline essential workers, people that are in frontline positions where they're dealing with the public, with their work on a daily basis, or they're in a profession such as food distribution. There's lots of different positions. I won't go through the whole list, but we're positions that are definitely eligible to receive that vaccine. So manufacturing, education, food and agriculture, government, public safety, transportation, and those. So that concludes my slides. I might leave them up here for a second in case there's any questions, but that concludes my briefing for this week.
Mr. Swift Justice, I have one quick question. We've had a lot of people, especially in the school system, concerned about educators getting the vaccination. The question is, do you have any idea what is out there and how long it will take to get the entire group of teachers and educators taken care of with a vaccine? Do you have any idea?
Yes, sir. That is an excellent question, Chairman, and it really all depends on our supply. We know that we this evening will be given our allocation for next week, and just to tell you, how this works, we just yesterday found out that the health department in Watauga County had some extra vaccine, and we sent a staff person they're transferring it to us. The state contacted us, and we're going to get that. That'll be able to help us. That's 2,000 doses. But there's so many faculty and staff between the public and private schools and the child care. I don't see us getting through that completely by March 11th, but we're going to try as hard as we can and working with our hospitals to make that happen.
Good answer.
But we're also, I will note, Chairman, if I could, that we also don't want to take our eye off the ball with individuals that are in groups 1 and 2, 65 and over, and healthcare workers. We have made good penetration into that group, and when you look at the statistics, but we know that there are still individuals that need to get the vaccine. So we're still allocating appointments to those groups as well.
Good. You got your hands busier than usual simply because you can't get the vaccine to put those hands to work. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Swift?
Yes, Chairman, I do. Joshua, I appreciate all the hard work that's been done. And if we can go back a couple slides relative to the data. For weeks now, I've kind of sat back, waiting, watching, and I still see that there's some disparities in the Black and brown communities relative to this vaccination. The number that you previously gave, is that the number of collaborative number for Forsyth County African Americans, that 7.2 that have gotten the vaccination, the first dose, based upon the population?
Yes, that is based upon our population. So in the African American population, 7.2% of the African American population has gotten the vaccine.
Right.
We are working with, and this could be through the health department, through the hospitals, or any other provider.
Yeah, I've heard that for the last couple of weeks now, and I don't know what we need to do in terms of moving this needle, all boots on the ground, but we have to, I'm just sharing this with our county manager, that we need to do something more. I don't know what that is, but I can't sit here for another 6 weeks to just kind of see us moving 1% and 2% from what it looks like for me. We just need to do a better job, and I don't know what that looks like, but we need to do something.
Yeah, well, and I should know that we have an outreach team that is going into the community. We worked this past weekend with Senator Lowe at Shiloh Baptist Church and worked through Holland Homes. And we've got other work that's in the process of future outreach, working with organizations like the NAACP and other groups.
Could I ask you a question? I mean, I've seen these numbers also, but I've also seen and heard about the outreach. Is there a fear factor out there that's causing some of these numbers to be low?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Wisenhunt. Yeah, obviously we know that there's hesitancy in our historically marginalized populations. And some of that, I believe, is, rightfully so, due to the history of bad things that have happened with medicine to our, especially our African American community. So I do believe there's some hesitancy. We are, like I told Ms. McDaniel, doing outreach to try to encourage individuals. We're also doing our marketing. We're working with a media placement service and putting marketing in publications that target our historically marginalized populations to try to ease those fears. And, really, I think that the key will be that outreach where we reach those community leaders, formal and informal. But, there is definitely some hesitancy. And that's not just in Forsyth County. That's a nationwide trend.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions?
On the very comment of Commissioner Wisenhunt's, I was wondering if we could, and this maybe is a Todd Luck, sort of thought, is to get some sort of little tiny sort of picture or little thing that books could be shown on the TV news every night locally, maybe the Sunday paper, maybe the Chronicle, both the Journal, whatever, that actually is like a little thermometer that kind of shows, man, we're only at 12.3%. I mean, we got a long way to go with a target of herd immunity at 70 or whatever our target was. Something that's kind of showing here's our target and we're making pretty slow progress, to get there. And it's something that gets out like every day on the news media. I mean, they've been covering COVID stuff every day. They could take a little COVID moment and say, here's our update. We want to give you that encouragement. That takes them 15 seconds of airtime and they can maybe do that. I have one question for Joshua.
Yes, sir.
The one question for you is, I just read in the paper today about the United Kingdom variant of COVID-19 is now here. And that causes me concern. Just everybody concerned is that now there may be more rapid spread. And I do have this, I don't know if it's me or just a sense that people are thinking everything's okay. And I think we've still got a long way to go and whatever we can continue to make that point. I don't know. I'm just concerned about that now we have the faster spreading variant here in Forsyth County.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So yes, we did find out this week that we've had one case. This is the 40th case in the state, and 45 other states have had this variant. The way that works is not every positive test is sent off for sequencing. So, this could have been here before. I'm pretty sure it probably was, but this positive test was sequenced. The providers that, did this test, they decided that it needed to be sent off based on what they saw. So, but it is a concern. There is some talk you're seeing that over time, these viruses like this, if you look at the history, they mutate. That's the nature of a virus. It mutates. But the concern is this one is more contagious. And then you also hear of other strains, like there's a South African strain, there's a California variant. So there is some talk that over time, what are now exceptions could be the norm, where that they are predominant. So while numbers are going down and things look better, we can't lose focus. We need more people to get vaccinated, and we still have to do our part with the mask and the social distancing until we can get through this.
Joshua Swift, thank you very much for the report. We appreciate it.
Just one comment, please, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to thank you again, Josh, also for your efforts. And I know that you've been organizing 8 different locations within the communities, especially the Black community, brown communities. And I want to encourage the community at large. When those sites are set up, please come out. And I'm going to be very specific. We were asked to provide vaccination in Holland Homes. One of those sites had 52 residents, the other one had 62. But that many did not show up to be vaccinated. So some responsibility is on us, and of course, some of it is on you. So community, come out, we're in locations, and make yourself, available for the vaccinations when we're there. It's very, very important that we work together on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Alameen, that was very good, and I think that your idea, Commissioner Martin, was a superior idea. It's just ideally suited for the media, and I hope they grab it and run with it. We have no discussion items today, and we have no closed session today, so we will continue our briefing for March 4th with our County Manager, Dudley Watts.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, board members and staff and guests, and thank y'all for a great session this morning. It was very helpful, and I think it does put us in the right direction as we head into the annual budget process. I would, if I could, just have one follow-on item from that, and it's just a quick discussion of the citizen survey that was out there. And we've got Scott Tesh here, and I will invite him up. Scott has a unique title with the city of Winston-Salem. He's one of their rock stars, and he's the director of In the Spring from a number of different companies. ETC Institute was one of those. We learned that that was the city's experience there with that company. And in talking with Scott, clearly he led us to the conclusion that they're the right surveyor, and the fact that they're familiar with this community. And I think, frankly, Scott was really generous around sharing lessons learned over the last couple of years that will help us, I think, hit the ground running at a pretty high level. So, and Scott's been great to sort of guide us in that effort. We put together a work group of county folks who are involved in outreach in that, and he really guided us. So thank you, Scott. He's got a short presentation about the survey, and I'll just turn it over to you.
All right, well, good afternoon, and I'd like to say thank you to the Board of Commissioners as well as to the County Manager for inviting me over. I do have a couple of slides. They're going to touch generally on resident surveying and then also kind of specifically on the city's process and how we handle it. So Kyle, if you will advance the slide for us. So why do local governments do resident surveys? Everyone knows because we want to know what our people are thinking, but more in detail, we do these specifically because we want to know how the community at large feels about it, and we'll get into how a statistically significant survey tool allows us to make those generalizations about the population at large. How does the city administer it? So we're going to talk about specifically our process using ETC, how we found them and what we do with them, the types of questions that we ask, and then ultimately how do we use that information. So all of that data comes in, we have all the raw data, but what do we put forward to the city council? How do they look at it? How do they interpret it? And in what manner does the staff help use that as part of the decision-making process? And then I got a couple of slides. They're just visualizations that we've used at prior strategic planning updates with city council. The data's a little old, but it'll give you an idea of what we're putting in front of them. If you'll hit the next slide for us. So like I said, the statistically significant tool here, I believe that Commissioner Martin talked about getting 400 responses. The city actually gets more than 1,000 when we do ours. We'll talk about the confidence interval and the margin of error in our specific survey instrument. But what that allows us to do is to survey those 400, 500,000 people and say with some level of certainty, this is what the community actually feels. So at 400 people, you're probably going to be at the 95% confidence interval and plus or minus 5%. We got a little over 1,200 responses to our most recent iteration of the survey, so we'll be closer to a 2.5% margin of error. That just allows us from year to year to know that there's less variation in the instrument itself. So understanding satisfaction, perceptions of service and livability. So we ask questions specifically about how do you feel about police, fire, recreation, our core services, but we also ask about how do you feel in the city as a place to live, to raise children? How do you feel about the local economy, the availability of affordable housing and jobs? So we do have community profile perception in our survey as well. Benchmarking against peer groups. So ETC will offer 3 different types of peer groups, actually. They'll offer a regional benchmark, a national benchmark, and then they will offer a peer cohort for anyone that they actually do the survey for. So for instance, the city of Winston-Salem, we know that they handle it for both Raleigh and Durham as well. So we can ask them to benchmark us specifically against Raleigh and Durham, and to the extent that Charlotte does it with ETC as well, those. So they do give you a wide array of benchmarks to use. How do we, what are we using this for in terms of direction, planning, and resource allocation? So we share this information with the city council in our strategic plan updates, which happen biannually. We try to put this information in front of them right during budget season when we can. So our most recent iteration of the survey began in November. We have the report is actually coming to our city council through the committee structure in March, as we're going into a strategic planning update in late March, and obviously through the budget season here in April, May, and June. And it's an opportunity for them to look at how residents have responded and to use that as part of how they understand what the highest needs are of the community, along with all of the other information that they get as well. And then obviously for trending over time. We're currently doing this annually. The value in this is probably not the year to year, but it's really seeing the trends over the course of 5 or 10 years. So you'll get more utility out of that the further you get with it. So, want to get into a little more of the specifics here. So obviously I said we do it annually. The third-party vendor that we use is ETC Institute. I know that Dudley and staff looked at the NRC survey and a couple of others too. I'll tell you, we chose ETC because of the customization that they offer in the survey instrument. They'll allow you to essentially do what you want with it. Some of the others are a little more rigid, and because of price. They beat everyone on price. Again, our format includes many different types of services, community profile questions, and perceptions of many of our core services. We ask demographic information and also what we call use information. So there's about 20 questions at the end, where we ask, have you used a rec center? Have you used a transit system? And we'll do that to filter out the data. So we may have questions about how do you feel about fixed route service in our transit system, and then we'll filter it by only the people who use the transit system or who indicate it as a primary method of transportation. So we do that so that we can drill into the responses and understand who's using our services as well, and with those people who are using it, how they feel about it compared to the general population. We mail out, or ETC mails out roughly 10,000 copies of the survey with a letter from the mayor or city manager explaining why we do this. A majority of people choose to fill in the survey in the web format. ETC offers it via email to do via the web. They will also call you on the phone. So they offer multiple methods of communication and getting that survey administered. We don't use the phone, we don't need to, but if they get really hard up on trying to get responses, they'll actually start calling people. We contract for responses, so this is one of the things I shared with the county manager. Some of these places you go and you say, we'll mail out 10,000 copies of the survey, and whatever your response rate is what you get. Our contract is actually for a number of responses, so we don't have to care as much about marketing the tool on the front end. From our perspective, we get 1,000 responses as a minimum and 100 per ward. It's roughly $35,000. Again, it would be cheaper if you went the route of only wanting 400 responses, probably in the neighborhood of $20,000 or $25,000, in line with what you budgeted. There are add-ons you can do for presentations and cross-tabulations and GIS mapping and all kinds of things. We choose to do some of those in-house, and so ours is a little suppressed from that price. Stratified random sampling. So again, we stratify it by ward, by geography. We want to ensure that every ward is well represented with a minimum of 100 responses, which is roughly 10% of the intake. We talked about the confidence interval and the margin of error already. We've talked about the operational and community indicators. And ETC does something that some of the others don't, and I want to stop right here for a second. So in each one of our service areas, let's say police and fire or recreation, there may be 6 or 8 questions about the service itself, and it will ask you, what are the 2 most important ones to focus on over the next 2 years? They actually do a calculation of the importance and the satisfaction of the service and spit that back out to you. I'll show it to you later. That's one of the more important things that ETC does for you. It will tell you where is a service both important and where someone is rating it as a perception low. Kyle, if you'll hit the next slide for us. So what do you do when you get this, right? You get a report that's 150 pages long, and your staff's going to get a spreadsheet that's so long they're not going to know what to do with. We're going to review the benchmarks. We're going to look at regionally, nationally, and our peer cohorts. Where are our gaps at? That's the first place that we're going to look. Where is Raleigh and Charlotte beating us? Where is the region really beating us? And I'll show you a little of what this looks like. We use it specifically in strategic planning. There's a 15 or 20-minute breakout session where we show them this information, and I'll show you a couple of those slides as well, how we try and give the information to the city council. Again, it's context. This is not the only way that you reach out to the community and do community engagement, but it is an opportunity to get that generalized information about your community. To the extent possible in those last 2 bullet points, you want it to factor into how you're allocating your resources. So what are the perceptions of your services, and how might that change the way with the limited resources you have that you're looking at your strategic planning and budget documents and how you might allocate that money? Kyle? Again, quickly, what we look at, these are just all of the services that we do. I would want to mention on here, we ask about overall communications as well. We ask, how do you get information from the city, and how do you want to get information from the city? Those are 2 different questions, but it's very enlightening in terms of our marketing strategies for things we do all over the city. Everything else there is pretty much a core service, including our contact center, 311. Kyle? So the next 2 slides, I'm going to go through these really quickly. This is benchmarking information against the regional benchmark. We show City Council where we're roughly equal to or greater than those benchmarks, and then they're probably more interested in this next slide, which is where do we fall short of that benchmark. So this is where we start having the conversation about gaps. Again, this data is a little bit older, and there's context to this. I'm not going to go into some of these. I can tell you what the national benchmarks are or what happened in the community that might have caused something different. But you get these types of charts and graphs. Kyle, if you'll hit the next one. We ask a series of questions in the survey at a departmental level to tell us how important something is and how satisfied you are. I'm not going to get into this in great detail, but basically that bottom left quadrant is we're not happy about it and it's a priority for us. So maintenance of city streets is something you will see in the city strategic plan as one of our most important objectives going forward. both in the 2017 and 2019 iterations, is because we continue to see that people know this is an important service and they're not terribly happy with it. Kyle, if you'll.
Scott, can I ask you a
Yes, ma'am.
question if I can? So for this, looking at this slide, it says police services. Does the results, there's seven, I guess, the wards. So do the representative for the wards get their information? For example, if it's a Northeast Ward representative, would they get that information specific, or is this just all throughout the city?
The city council does ask by ward for that information.
They
We
do,
provide
okay.
it separately, and we give them the note, the statistical significance changes, because you get now a sample from each ward, so you don't have the same level of statistical significance.
That is correct.
Of the subgroups you do of the overall population. But yes, they ask for it by ward, and we give it to them separately in a staff report.
So how could you do that for us? Because many of us represent in districts. So some of us represent District B and A and then at large.
So you would work with them on what your total sample size is going to be, how many you want to be within each district, and then they geolocate the responses based on where they send them, so they can tell you exactly how many come from which district.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Next slide. So that important satisfaction analysis I talked about, where they ask what are the two most important things in this category, this is just a list of those that make the high or very high list of importance and satisfaction. ETC will put this, if you so choose them, in the report. You'll be able to see this by service area. We break it out for council basically in red and yellow to say, hey, these are the things that, again, probably should float to the top of the list of what should be on your mind when you're thinking about resource allocation, where people aren't happy with the current level of service or how it's being provided. The next slide, we try and, in a tabular format, really break it down very easily by service area and say, here are the things that were the lowest ranked, here are the things that are the lowest ranked, again, with that important satisfaction analysis. And then you see at the bottom, recreation and communications, the three that had the highest variance in terms of national and regional benchmarks. So these are the areas where we've got some kind of potential gap, and we either need to investigate why, or we need to look at where resources are needed for this. Next slide. This is the same thing, basically, again, by service area, and instead of just a checkbox, you have a bullet point for basically the type of question that was there. So on the previous slide, you'd have seen police services with a check mark. These are the individual police services that fell into one of those categories. And if you'll hit the next slide, Kyle. So I'm here to answer comments and questions, to talk about the city's strategy in any level of detail you need me to. Mr. Manager, if there's anything you want me to hit on that I haven't in terms of marketing strategy. They do have a non-random component of the survey as well, which we do online, so anybody can go out and answer it. We are very careful at the city not to allow that one to take place until we've gotten to a 95% response rate on our random version of the survey. Council members like to say anybody can give their input. Staff is very careful to say we don't know where that input comes from. We can geolocate it by IP address, but I can't tell you if it was a city resident or a county resident. And I can't tell you that 100 people in the same community didn't, grab that survey and really make it theirs instead of, it's just, I can't tell you it's representative of the community at large. And so we're very careful to provide that context when we give that information, but council asks for that as well via another staff report.
Comments or questions for Scott Tesh?
I
Go ahead.
have
Commissioner
one.
Martin?
I noticed in the materials we got that Durham County and city do theirs together. And a joint survey. And I can see how there'd be some savings in that if we were both doing it, although it's not going to be, there's going to be, the sampling will be a little bit different, but you would all, because you would have a guaranteed county sample and obviously it could be structured on our districts as well. But it does seem like it would save some money to actually have a joint survey. And did I understand you to say you do it every year?
We do it every year, and we are currently at the maximum level of basically how long you want that survey to be. So one of the considerations that would go along with that, as you saw in Durham's, is you'd have to figure out what questions from a city perspective we wanted to lose in order to add something for that. But that's probably a conversation for you and the city council.
Yeah, it would be good to have it, because there are also items that we do jointly, like
Yep.
water, the water and sewer and landfill issue.
I will note that the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities does their own survey, actually using ETC as well, separate from the city survey. So we ask questions about water and sewer. But they go into a significantly higher level of detail asking about water quality sampling. So I don't know that they've committed to doing it annually. I know they did the first one, I believe, about 18 months ago, but they did do a separate instrument on their own for water, sewer, and solid waste disposal. Yeah.
Well, there may or may not be any synergy in it, but yeah, I think you have underscored that it's a valuable tool for the city of Winston-Salem to sort of get a handle on. And when you get a control survey, like you say, when you just put something on a website and anybody and everybody, and you can't, I mean, somebody from California gets it and fills it out. I mean, or here, how about get my next 5 people to fill out this one and say this because I hate this or whatever. Yeah, I think it's a good methodology and sounds like a good company, and the benchmarking is invaluable. Thanks.
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I really appreciate the information. I was curious if you had a sample from a county that was actually done by ETC that we could look at,
Do I have a sample from a county?
or just a reference to one from a website that we could look at that they actually did in North Carolina.
Yeah, so we actually, since you have the Durham City County report, and so you'll have that. We can certainly get a copy of a county-only report. You know, there's a couple things. One is I want to really thank Scott Tesh. You know, being able to, I think I texted Lee and said, "Are you okay if I borrow Scott to help with this?" And he did, and Scott has been tremendous and has this background and has kind of been through this. So I really want to thank Lee for that and thank Scott for taking time to come over and be with us today. You know, the other complexity we have is, you know, 8 municipalities in Forsyth County, the district structure, and then how to do this in a way that doesn't cause survey confusion for Lee's, for Scott's issue. And so, so anyway, we really do have some challenges, and we'll, you know, the design piece of this will take a little bit so that we feel good about it. And I think to your point, the fact that you're surveying everything every year, the same things, you know whether you're getting better or worse. And so the benchmark is important. So you know, it's going to take a little bit of time. I think I naively said, "What if we can have this by budget submittal?" And he laughed, just like he is right now. So it'll be a thing that we have for next year at the winter work session, and we want to do it and do it right. But thank you, Scott.
Scott, I live in the city, so I take your surveys. I would like to say, I think oftentimes they're a little lengthy. Do you find that folks just do not complete the survey?
So we do hear that. It's about 6.5 pages long, includes about 167 questions. Takes the average person 15 to 20 minutes to do. We are at, per ETC's direction, the maximum length that they really like to have it before the response rate really falls off. There are communities who do shorter versions of the survey, but what we hear is that doesn't really change the response rate that much. So if we were to drop from 6 or 7 pages down to 3, the response rate might go up 5 to 8% or something like that. And again, because the contract from our perspective is worded based on the number of responses we're requiring to receive, it's really incumbent upon the survey administrator to send out enough to make that minimum. So yes, we do hear that. And the city manager and I have discussed, you know, is there another program under which we could do something much shorter for civic engagement as well?
Thank you.
Scott Tesh, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
All right. Again, thank you, Scott.
Turn the meeting over to Dudley Watts, our county manager.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, yeah, the only other item we have today is just to finalize this agenda for the Thursday, March 4th meeting. And so we've already been through them once, but we do have a few additions or things we need to mention. I'll dive into it. Item 1 is approval of the minutes for the meeting of February 23rd, and they went out yesterday.
They have not gone out yet. I will try to get them out at the latest Monday.
Okay, very good, thank you. Public session is item 2. Item 3 is resolution approving a second revision to the fiscal year 2021 Home and Community Care Block Grant County Funding Plan, and that it authorizes the execution of the necessary documents to submit it for state approval. Kyle reviewed this last Tuesday. You got any questions?
Questions or comments?
I think we're good. Okay, item 4 is resolution authorizing submission to application to the State Library of North Carolina to apply for this LSTA grant for these libraries as listed. Damon does have one addition on this one, so.
Sure. So there's a slight correction on the dollar amount, on the math that they did for this. So the total grant project that was in your agenda packet is $85,354 with a $64,000 grant and a $21,000 match in county funds, which is Lucy Haynes Chatham grant money and in-kind labor. The numbers actually should be not $85,354, but $92,892. So that raises the grant from $64,016 up to $66,669, and then it raises our match from $21,338 to $23,223. Of that $23,000, $5,800 is labor, and then $17,000 are Lucy Haynes Chatham Fund grant monies that the county has.
Could
That's
you
how we're
carefully
matching.
repeat that whole thing one more time?
I could. I don't think you want me to. I could.
I think I got
Yeah,
it.
and Damon, this is Brian. I'm here as well if there's any further explanation or clarity needed. I do apologize on behalf of the library for the clerical error. We recently received an updated invoice from the vendor Biblioteca, who we typically go through for this equipment and for this process, and so that also impacted the changes that we needed to make. So apologies on behalf of the department for the late amendment. But if there are any other questions, I could address them as well.
Further questions, commissioners, comments? Thank you, Damon.
Very good. Item 5 is a resolution to accept 2020 Help America Vote Act, or HAVA funds from North Carolina State Board of Elections for election administration. You got the associated budget ordinance amendment. Questions?
Questions, comments?
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Item 6 is an amendment to the 2020 Forsyth Tech Technical Community College Capital Maintenance 2/3 bond CPO. You heard from Dr. Spriggs last Tuesday, and so if you have any questions.
Questions? Okay.
Item 7 is a resolution awarding a contract for chiller replacement at Piedmont Propulsion. Mark Davidson reviewed that.
Comments? Okay.
All right. Item 8 is a resolution awarding a contract for the purchase of Dodge Durango police pursuit vehicles for use by emergency services as paramedic quick response vehicles. There's associated budget ordinance amendment, and Dr. Martin challenged us on the vehicle, kind of the price of it, and then also the fuel efficiency. And so I'll turn it over to Damon. We did a little research. We have found a more fuel efficient and slightly cheaper model. And I think, anyway, go ahead.
So as Dudley noted, we were challenged last week to go back and look at the vehicles that EMS was requesting for their response program. And as a result, there was actually a 6-cylinder, a V6, that has a little less horsepower, so it's about 70 less horsepower, but it still has the police package with the enhanced drivetrain and brakes and suspension and four-wheel drive that they need, and the space, because they also are transporting people. And it actually was about $2,000 less than the V8 model. So we're willing to negotiate and try that and save a little bit of money.
Comments or questions?
And more fuel efficient.
Yeah.
And it's more fuel efficient.
We're mandating that these manly paramedics have a slightly wimpier vehicle, and I'm sure it's going to work out fine. So, anyway, any more questions?
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for mentioning it. We're the sustainability work group. It is in the sustainability work group's purview, and we are at the place where we've gotten the mission vision for that group, and they're taking off. But that kind of thing is exactly what's on their radar screen. So
I think you've answered every question about the Dodge Durango 6-cylinder that I can think of.
a little wimpier, but these guys are going to be okay. So we told them they were going to get a Prius, and so they feel like this is an update.
Oh, me.
I mean, you do all understand this is going from a 5.7 liter engine is what we had spec down to a 3.5 liter engine, and the fuel efficiency's improved by about 30%.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things about having Commissioner Don Martin. He's really good at stuff like that.
Right. We're glad. I think it'll be an interesting trial, and we'll get through it.
All right.
Agenda item 9 is a resolution selecting an architectural firm and authorizing execution of a contract to provide professional architectural and engineering services for the clubhouse project. James Anderson reviewed that. Are there any addition on that?
Comments? Questions?
All right. Item 10 is a resolution ratifying and authorizing the execution of an interlocal agreement between Forsyth County on behalf of the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office and Davidson County for digital forensic services. Randy Hunsucker reviewed that.
Questions? Okay.
Item 11 is a resolution authorizing the county manager to continue the process of disengaging from Cardinal Innovations Healthcare and seek realignment with Partners Behavioral Health Management. Chairman asked, I believe, Gordon to kind of quickly review that process.
I did. Let me explain why. Because the last week, thank goodness we have Gordon Watkins, but commissioners, I said, we have a disengagement thing we're going to look at. It's item number 11, and I was under the impression that once we simply voted on it, that was it. That is not it. Mr. Watkins?
Yes, sir, and I apologize for any confusion. This is a very confusing process. Chantel Robinson has been leading a big team of folks who've been looking into this, and one of those members, Krista Smith from DSS, prepared a very nice timeline. And so what that timeline establishes is this will be approximately about an 11-month process, and we're right around month number 4. And part of the reason that we're only in month 4 is because Chantel and her folks have been doing a really the detailed process, and you all have participated also of really searching for the best partner who ends up being partners for us to realign with. And so what is before you today is what's called a disengagement plan, and that will be approved next week, March 4th, but that is not the end of the process at all. We still have about 7 months to go. What that does, and you have that in your packet, the disengagement plan, that lays out what has been done and what are the next steps. And once you approve that, if you do approve that next week, it will be published, and we will solicit public comments for a 60-day period. After we receive those comments, we will then put those comments on our website for another 30 days. So that's at least 3 months right there. During that time, there are many other steps that Chantel and her folks will be working on. 2 of those things that will come back to you for your approval are called the continuity plan and the disbursement plan. And so basically those are, continuity obviously is how patients are going to transfer from Cardinal to Partners. The paramount concern is no client is going to be left out in the cold. Everyone will be taken care of. Disbursement plan won't be that much. There are not many assets involved here. But so anyhow, the goal is to have you all approve everything as of June. And then shortly thereafter, we'll submit, if it's the board's wish, we will submit to the secretary the written request to disengage, which has 9 different items that have to be in that request. That is the last act that we will take as a county. And then the Secretary of DHHS has up to 90 days to decide, to say yes or no on that. And so that decision could come, any time after July, but likely in September or October, that time frame. And so I just wanted to clarify, this is a very detailed process, and obviously approving the disengagement plan is a very important step, but it's not the final step that will be taken. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and Chantel is also here too.
7 months out, Mandy Cohen could still say, I don't like what you guys are doing. You've made a good effort, but we're just going to keep Cardinal the way you got it now. I think that's the way it finally ends up when the sun goes down. Is that correct?
Absolutely. This is a process whereby we are asking for permission to disengage and realign. That permission may be granted and it may not.
Any questions, comments?
I'll just comment that I forwarded some email I got yesterday to Chantel, and I really appreciate the very thorough answer that she provided me, which was good. So thank you for your taking time to sort of sort through that.
Chantel, anything you'd like to say?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. I know that this is a very important decision for the board to make on behalf of our residents. And so if there's any questions that I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Will it cost us anything?
Will it cost us anything? Nothing additional.
Okay. Thank you, Gordon. Appreciate everything. Mr. County Manager.
All right, item 12 is a resolution authorizing the county manager to solicit offers for county-owned real property located at 3554 Clemens Road. Kirby Robinson reviewed that.
Questions? Comments? Okay.
Item 13 is a resolution authorizing the acceptance of 4 easements from the city of Winston-Salem related to the construction and operation of the new Forsyth County Courthouse located on Chestnut Street.
Questions?
All right. Item 14 is the second reading of these, second reading? It is the second reading of these ambulance franchise ordinances. And then the last item is resolution acknowledging receipt of the tax collector's report of the total amount of unpaid 2020 taxes that are liens on real property. And that will take care of next Thursday's
Thank you
formal
very
meeting.
much. Appreciate that.
Only other item I have is just a really reminder that we do have a meeting on Monday. Ashley, you want to talk a little bit about that? We intend for it really to be a virtual meeting and fairly short, just to accept the comments, but.
So Monday's meeting is going to be at 2 p.m. and we plan to have it virtual. I will email you the link on Monday morning just to make it easier for you. However, if you would like to come in the office, you are also more than welcome to do that. This meeting is a special meeting and it will be for the adoption of the 5 bond orders we just had the public hearing on.
And just out of clarification, we would not be set up in here. If you're here in the building, you probably would be doing it virtually from your office.
From your office.
Not from here. We won't have the video thing and all this.
Right. It will be from your office on your device, your iPad. Does anyone have any questions?
Pretty good, yeah, just perfect. No one has a question, so. Hold it, Ted, did you see?
Second.
We have a motion by Ted and a second by Commissioner Fleming Elamine to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Bye-bye.